All right. Okay, so welcome to class number 7 of Shara Yichud with commentary by Reb Hillel of Orech. Personally, I'm now on the other side of the Atlantic. I went from being in Florida and now I'm in Eretz Israel. And just mentioning Eretz Israel, before we make some announcements, I just want to ask Mila to reset our kavanah, because we started off right in the beginning talking about doing this study with Eretz Israel as our focus. That was the Rebbe's focus. So I think that it's time, certainly for me coming back to Israel, it feels like a good time to refocus that energy. And so I'm going to ask Mila to just help us to reset our focus according to the Rebbe's vision.
Sure, thank you, Naria. And yeah, our initial desire and remains that initial desire, but I feel it's very important to revisit that original ratzon that we had with that we have with Naria, is the clarity of intention of the class is really the safety and expansion of the borders of Eretz Israel. And because this is, the original sicha that the Rebbe gave us in Tafshinun Beis in Chesmar Cheshvan, and we actually touched on it during our introductory class, and this is where the Rebbe gave us as the tools of how we can conquer and expand the borders of Eretz Israel in a peaceful manner, and expand it to an exceptionally lofty sizes, which is probably going to be like 20 times bigger than what we have right now. And these are the lands of Keni, Knizi, and Kadmoni, which is Moab, Ammon, and Edom. That this is the 3 moichin, right? This is exactly what we're learning in Shara Yichud about Moach HaChochma, Moach HaBina, and Moach HaDas. And we see how big and how much significance they actually hold pertaining to the territory of Eretz Israel. These are huge amounts of land, and 2.5 tribes already, excuse me, 2.5 tribes already started that process of conquering on the other side of the Yarden. And Bezrat Hashem, this expansion in ourselves should lead to the broader expansion. And we're definitely expanding our capabilities in this class with all the materials that we are learning, and holding that vision of beautiful expanded borders and definitely safe borders of Eretz Israel in and outside is the clarity of intention of this class. And with all the beautiful signs that we are getting of the earthquakes on Friday, and solar eclipse that's going to be on Monday, which is Erev Rosh Chodesh Nisan, and also the Paras, the Iran is threatening Eretz Israel. These are all signs of things are really happening in the spiritual world, and Hashem is shaking the reality a bit. So we are part of this historical time. So these are the intentions we have, and Naria Bezrat Hashem will go over the material that we're going to be covering in this class.
Okay, thanks, Mila. So before we talk about what we're going to do in this class, I just want to make a couple of announcements. One is that we are going to be taking a break for Pesach now for a month. And we will come back together on May 5th. And obviously we'll let you know before then. Because I think everybody is going to be really busy now before Pesach and through Pesach. So in this class, we're going to finish Chochma, which is good timing. And then when we come back, we'll look at the three aspects of Bina and Das and continue. And, the hope for myself and my hope for you too is that we're able, within all of the preparation for Pesach, to do some of the hitzbonenot on what we've been learning, and not to just make it a vacuum in terms of this learning, but somehow to continue to think about it and work with the text, whatever it is that you can do. Even if, for a few minutes in the morning, you put it into your mind so that when you're cleaning and cooking and doing whatever, you can be thinking about it as well. Or however it is that you feel that you can continue and not take a complete break from it, even though we're taking breaks from the classes themselves. Then something else that we're going to be putting into the Google Drive soon is some recordings that Mila made a number of years ago, it's just Mila reading and translating line by line this text that we're learning. So there's no explanation, but for those of you who want to learn with more clarity from the Hebrew text, you'll be able to, on the screen, you'll see the Hebrew text and you'll hear Milia's voice, just doing word by word, reading and translating. And a couple of people have mentioned that, that is something that they want to be doing, is getting more access to the Hebrew text. And I feel that this will be really useful for people who want to put in that extra work and just work with the text and not necessarily go through the entire video when you're doing Chazara. So hopefully we'll be putting that up quite soon. What else? Okay. So just to put ourselves in context, the last 2 weeks, we really looked into the Orech of Chochma, which is really looking at where do ideas come from? Where does the intellect come from? And we explored the idea of the Koach HaMaskil and the new ideas flashing into our Chochma brain. So today we're going to take that further and go and look at the Rochav and the Orech of Chochma. Now, these are three terms that for those of you who are Hebrew speakers, it's really easy. But for those of you who are English speakers, just make a note of this. So you have the Orech, which is the depth. You have the Rochav, which is the width. And you have the Orech, which is the length. These are three terms that we're going to be using over and over again. And it gets a little bit tedious to translate them. And for me personally, the translation is kind of like, when you translate Chesed and Gevurah, it's more like you have to get a feel of it. It's not so much so literal. Although as Mila says, we have to start thinking of Chochma as being in 3 dimensions. As soon as something has length and width and depth, it means that you're dealing with something that has more than 1 dimension. It has 3 dimensions. So today what we're going to be doing is looking at the Orech of Chochma, which is the width of Chochma, and then the Rochav of Chochma, and then the Orech of Chochma. And, very basically, we're going to go into the details, but basically, this is the process of taking the idea from the Orech of Chochma and bringing it down, so then we can bring it then into the left brain and begin to have more access to it in the Bina brain. So Mila's going to read and translate. And after the translation, before we go into a detailed discussion of it, what I'll do is I'll go through a summary just to make sure that anybody who missed kind of the pshat of the text will be able to hear it in English, the flow of the ideas, and then we'll have a more detailed discussion. Okay, Mila, let's go.
All right, and let me just press my annotation thing. Yeah, you see, yeah, do you see my red thingy, whatever that is? My red pointer,
Yes.
yeah, and the screen.
Yes,
Okay,
we do.
beautiful.
Can you
And
make the
this could be
writing if you make the writing a bit bigger, that's great.
yes, sure. Is it bigger now?
Yeah, that's big.
Okay, great. Okay, so before we're gonna go into this paragraph, I just want to bring you a few paragraphs above. It's on page Kufnun. When we started learning about this notion about our sphere is having 3 dimensions. Yeah, and we're just gonna go a very short chazara. It says over here, Me'ata yesh lahavin. From now, we need to understand sheyesh bekol echad migimel chelke hasechel Chabad hanal, that there is in every one of the 3 parts of the brain, Chabad, as it was mentioned above, Gimel Bechinos, 3 aspects. Shehu, which is Bechinos Omek, the aspect of Omek, depth, Orech, length, Rochav, and width. So if you are to describe a dimension, usually, naturally, we want to discuss depth, width, and length. But here, these 2 words are seemingly in interesting order. It first says depth, then says length, and then says width. Just keep that question as we're going to go into the paragraph that we designed. Not we didn't design, but we plan to discuss today. It was designed by Reb Hillel. Okay. We're going to go to our paragraph. Yeah, this is, this paragraph was about Omek of Chochma, and here we go. We are on page 302, right here in Likutei Beurim, and those are following us in English. Naria, which page is that? The English translation.
The English translation is page 27.
Page 27. Okay, great. And yeah, all the questions would be great if they would be going straight into the chat. Okay, me'ata yesh lahavin. From now, we need to understand, or there is to understand. Oh, I'm sorry, I skipped a paragraph. My pardon. Okay, here we go. It's a short one today. Okay. V'hine kol hanal. In here, everything that we discussed above, hu inyan omek of chochma. This is the idea of omek of chochma. Aval bechinas rochav de chochma, but the aspect of rochav of the chochma, hu etzem neviat hasechel. It's the essence of neviat is like revelation of the sechel, hagalui, which is revealed mimkora, from its source. Right? And he right away in brackets puts a mashal, al derech mashal, ma'ayan hagalui canal, the revealed wellspring, as it was mentioned above. Nikra chochma shebachachma. It's called chochma of the chochma. Hu bechinas yud the chochma. This is the aspect of the yud of chochma. So from this we understand that the actual revelation of chochma takes place in a width of chochma, not in omek. Why not in omek? Because we just established that omek is nothing. It's like a corner. Omek doesn't have an entity on its own, therefore nothing takes place in omek. Omek is not an entity where a revelation takes place. Omek is no entity, right? En lo mahut, well, it does not have a mahut at all. Okay, this is where the Rochav is. Rochav, that's where all the actions take place. A Rochav, it's like a room where everything else is happening. It's not a door through which the things are taking place. Okay, let's go. Now we're going to go into Orech. Now, Orech the Chochma, hu ma sheyesh, Orech of Chochma, hu ma sheyesh bekoach ha-Chochma. This is what a power of Chochma possesses, lahashpil etzem haskalat ha'inyan, to bring down, lahashpil, to bring down the essence of the haskala, of this idea, ulahalbisha bebechinas hesber de bina, and to enclose it into the explanation of bina. Just pardon me for one. Sorry about that. So the Orech of Chochma is what Chochma has in its power to bring down, to lower down the essence of the Haskalah, of the idea, and to enclose it into the aspect of Bina. Meaning, now Chochma, it's not in its pure state, it's already thinking about giving lower to the Bina. And what that means, we're going to discuss soon. Inyan HaBina, what is the idea of Bina? He metzius ta'amim uzvares lahasechel hanal, to the seichel, meaning the Bina is finding different explanations and different reasons for that essence of the seichel that Chochma presents. Okay? V'hamamtiotam, and what actually activates and constructs these explanations and these ideas. To koach ha'orech de Chochma. This is the power of the Orech of the Chochma, meaning Orech of the Chochma. That's the power that Bina kind of takes in, and with that power, he's able to find all kinds of different explanations and different reasoning behind the idea. Okay, so Vahu b'chinas Bina the Chochma, and this is the aspect of the Bina of the Chochma now, right? So Bina of the Chochma is packaging the Chochma in specific coding to bring down to Bina, so all the explanations and reasoning can be explained. So now I'm going to take you a little bit back to the Talmudic discussion, if you remember that, when we explained the difference in general between Chochma and Bina. Right? The Rav, what was the discussion back then? The Rav had was asked a halachic question, and he provided a ruling. So the ruling was, no, the egg is not allowed to be used. The egg that was laid on Yom Tov is not to be used because it's muktzah. And they came to him and they said, "Oh well, how about you allowed to? We know that it's allowed to shecht a little calf that was born from treifa, and it's not muktzah on Yom Tov." And he didn't have an explanation. Okay, and the reason was because he knew and he saw the ruling on, he grasped it with his chachma and not with his bina. Now, Rabbi Ben Nehemiah is the one who actually was able to understand the reasoning behind it. So that reasoning behind it is the idea of bina. Okay, and that's why he was able to give them and explain them why this is so. However, the ruling remained the same. Okay, there was no change in ruling, but now we were able to grasp and understand. Now, and this is the idea of Bina of the Chochma, which is Nikra b'Sefer Yitzira, and if we look in Sefer Yitzira, it's called Haben de Chochma. This is called understanding of Chochma. V'hu b'chinas kutz hatachton, and this is the lower like if you look at Yud, yeah, let me just show. Okay, this is kutz hatachton. This is the lower portion of the Yud. Asher sharsha lemala miguf hanekuda. But truly, that lower part of the Yud is actually rooted above the body of the point. We're going to the next page of Yud. Okay, we're getting very technical. Okay, that's where it's rooted. So Yud has two kuts. You know, there's an upper Yud and then there's a lower Yud. I'm soon going to show you the diagram, right? Yud shehu b'chinas omek of Chochma. So we're talking about the Orech of Chochma, the length, which is the lower portion of the Yud, is actually rooted in the omek of Chochma, in the depth of Chochma, hanikra keser de Chochma, which is called the crown of Chochma. Okay. So let me just show you this little diagram that I designed just to provide a little clarity. Yeah, everybody sees the diagram, yeah? Is it big enough?
Please make it bigger, Mila.
Sure, here we go.
Okay.
So this is the Yud of Chochma. So if we take the Yud, okay, we could see here that this portion of the Yud is Kutzo HaElyon. Yeah, I did not have the Ktav Ashuris on my computer, so it's not as obvious. But if you look in Sefer Torah, the Yud has a crown. Every Yud has a crown. So Bezrat Hashem, I'll change it once I'll download that Yud. So this portion is Omek of Chochma. And this is Keter of Chochma, the crown of Chochma. So now this part right here, this is the actual body of Chochma, right? This is Rochav of Chochma. This is the width of Chochma. This is where all the actions of Chochma actually take place. It's the room. It's like it's a tiny room, but this is where everything is happening in Chochma. Now, we are right here right now, okay? And this is the Orech of Chochma, the length of Chochma. What he's saying that from where Chochma, the Orech of Chochma, will get its power to actually lower down the concept to such an extent that it will be explained in Bina or explained to Bina. It's because Orech right here depends on Omek. Orech depends on Omek, meaning the length depends on the depth. And this is very essential to understand because it's in every place in Seder Ishtalshalos. It's a rule, it's a code, that everything works this way. When we empty ourselves enough to accept, meaning we have a very, very powerful Omek, we are able to lower it down and pass it down with much ease. And this is where we see a very interesting message. Yeah, so this is Omek depends on Omek, meaning Orech depends on Omek. So we're going to go back to the text. Okay, so now, right now, we established three things: that Omek of Chochma, called Keser of Chochma, Rochav of Chochma, the width of Chochma, is the Chochma of Chochma, and the length of Chochma is Bina of Chochma. Okay, so this is the language that we would need to get familiar with, because this is the language that is being used throughout all of Chassidus, and these terms are interchangeable. So we, really need to know them. Hilefi Orech HaOmek, because in accordance of the Orech of the Chochma, okay. I'm sorry, my Pesach, my kids are in a Pesach mood. That's it. I'm sorry about it. Okay, Kilefi Orech HaOmek, because in accordance to the Orech, Hu Bechinas Bitul Shebekli, which is the aspect of the bitul of the keli, moichai, right, the keli of his brain, lekabel mikoach hamaskil, to receive from koach hamaskil, kachu erech habitul. This is the same way it's going to be the bitul lahaniach es atzmoi velahashpia bebchinas bina, to set himself aside and to give to bina. And this is a very, very powerful statement, and it's a rule in all of Seder Ishtalshalos. How we receive, this is how we give. And therefore, in the times of Moshe Rabbeinu, Chachamim Eshtecho, Chachamim he was able to find, mitzad guf hanekuda de yud, from the actual guf, the body of the nekuda of the yud, aval navainim lo eshtechachu. But navainim he wasn't able to find. What's navainim? There is a term which is called chachamim. Chachamim, these are wise people in general, right? And then there's a term which is called navainim. Okay, so now chachamim, apparently it's easier to find, even in the times of Moshe Rabbeinu, than navainim. So now, what is navainim? Navainim shuhu kach yeser naale. This is a much higher power to be a navon. Lahashpil v'lahalbish koach hachachma, to lower down and to enclose the power of chachma into bina. Shezeu koach haben de chachma. And now this is koach of haben of chachma. It's an understanding of chachma. Shesharsha ba'omek de chachma, that its root is in the omek of chachma. And when a person actually masters this power of his soul, he's able to understand from this seichel, from this whatever chachma he's learning, new chachmas. How is that possible? Well, if we are establishing that the Orech of chachma, right, which is a person who is navon, right, so he's able to explain it to the bina. That's why he's called navon. If he's capable of doing that, we assuming that he has a very, very deep understanding into the concept, right? Meaning he has already depth. So now, depth into what? Depth into koach hamaskil, because this is what omek of chochma is. Omek of chochma is the gateway to koach hamaskil. So once the person is accustomed to visiting that place, which is called koach hamaskil, now, besides this particular chachma, he actually has access to any, right? If you enter into the treasure house and you have access to it. So right now you took a diamond, but maybe tomorrow you'll take a ruby, right? You're not limited. You're already entering that chamber with no limitations. You figured out a principle by which you could draw down a new chachma. So now once you're already in that space, if we want to call it a space, into that reality, you could bring down whatever you need. Okay, that's exactly what he's saying here, right? Meaning, lahaskil haskolis chadashis. Okay, velahas mini haseichel sheshama mirabba. Meaning, he is using the seichel that he heard from his Rebbe, right, as a stepping stone through which he's able to go higher and higher, reach his koach hamaskil, and draw down new seichels. And the same way it's being drawn down to bina. Lahamti zvaris chadashis, b'sechel echad. Right? So now he's also able to, in the Bina realm, to bring out new explanations into that particular seichel. And this is called the Chochma of Bina, right? Okay, that we later on gonna explain. Okay, navon, and all of this is called navon. Person who is navon, shemevin davar mitach davar. What's navon means? That he understands one thing from another thing. Okay, v'zelo eshtachachu, and this he did not find. Kanal vadal, as it was explained, and vadal means vaday lemavin, right? And it's enough for the maven, right? Again, maven, right? Navon, mevin, right? So this is what we're going to do today. That's it. It's a short paragraph. I guess Rabbi Hillel figured out that there's going to be a group of beautiful women that's going to be doing this, this class. And he knew that this class, according to the plans, would fall right on Erev, Erev Rosh Chodesh Nisan, and how busy we could get. And he said, okay, no problem. That's what I'm going to make it short. Okay, and this is a beautiful passage, and it gave us a tremendous amount of insight. We're going to go back to the diagram, a tremendous amount of insight to understand this concept. Okay, so this diagram is definitely going to be available and accessible, is understanding that the length, our ability to give lower, to lower down the concept into explanations and mashalim and all that stuff. It actually depends on our power to receive. Now, let me ask you, who was the wisest man on earth that ever lived? It's a question.
Shlomo.
Shlomo Melech, beautiful. How can we measure his wisdom? What was so special about him?
He gave so many mashalim, one mashal over another, to bring it down.
Beautiful. So he was able to explain concept with 3,000 mashalim. Okay, not one, not two, 3,000. Meaning for one concept, he had 3,000 mashalim. Can you imagine? Like, wow. Right? I don't know if my AI is able to do it, right? If you go to AI, okay, give me 3,000 metaphors on this concept, I think it's gonna like say, oh, I'm sorry, I have some limit there. So it's amazing, right? So that's how we measure the depth of a person's wisdom, is how many mashalim, how well they can explain things, not how they understand it. How well they can explain, meaning the wisdom is not this, the wisdom is not the width of the Chochma, the wisdom is the depth of the Chochma. And how can we measure the depth? Can you bring it down? If you cannot bring it down, that means something is wrong. You didn't understand it yourself, right? The minute you understand yourself, right, you able to actually bring down. Okay, and how can we measure it? Is by mashalim. Mashalim is how we able to enclose things. So in order to bring a mashal, what you need to understand, like let's say, I don't know, any teachers here, like why we're bringing mashalim, like what's the story, like especially in elementary, like you bring a metaphor, what is that you're looking for? And what's my kesher? What's the connection between what you're bringing to the concept? Because it has a similar patterns. So pattern recognition, right? Meaning if we are able to look at something, for example, into a sun, or we'll look at the candle, or we'll look at something which is completely has nothing to do with the concept that we're trying to explain, but we recognize a very similar pattern. Okay, so we know the concept, meaning we know the patterns in the concept, and therefore when we see something which is completely irrelevant to the concept, right? We're able to recognize the patterns in that concept, and therefore it's a fit. Does that make sense? But if a person doesn't have a depth of understanding how things work in the concept, he cannot give birth to mashalim. He doesn't understand. Because, and that's what omek of the concept is. Omek of concept is the ability to recognize patterns in the concept. So you need to know it so well to recognize pattern in that concept. So I see there are some questions. Let's see. Okay, upper cuts and lower cuts. Okay. What is the between having the Chochma and Chakam de Bina? Oh, haben the Chochma and Chakem Bina. Okay, so haben of Chochma is the Bina of Chochma. It's just in the words, right? Chakam de Bina is the Chochma of Bina. When we're going to go into Bina, we're going to see that.
So, Mila, it's actually not so clear. I also had that question that Chaya has, where it seems that Haben de Chochma is the Orech of Chochma.
Mhm.
But then in the text, it refers to Chacham de Bina. Is that already talking about Bina? It's
Yes.
not talking about Chochma. Okay.
That's what he says, and I will explain it. Meaning in the next paragraph, when we're going to be learning about the 3 dimensions of the Bina, he's going to go into what Chakem de Bina actually means. And that's already the aspect of Navon. Right? The aspect of Navon is a person who is able to take the concept and lower it down to such an extent, right? Because he has such a deep understanding and deep awareness of this concept. And this is something that we definitely all need to strive into, right? When we're going to go into our Koach HaMaskil, right? Bezrat Hashem. Okay. So any questions so far about what we've learned? Any clarifications about the diagram and all that? Or we good?
Maybe Mila, first I'll share, like I'll go over the
Yes.
chat, and then we'll go deeper into it.
Beautiful.
Okay. All right. So
exactly. So somebody said, and also they can paskin on new inyanim perhaps. Beautiful. Exactly. So a person who is navon is able to use, and that's why, to be a dayan, you really need to study, for extra 4 years. How much is dayanos is because specifically about that. That's exactly what they learn, how they learn the rulings that was in the past and how they can actually apply it to the rulings of today. For example, about electricity, when the rulings were done in, or for example, now with the fertility issues that so many people are experiencing, people having a whole bank of new questions. Who is the parent with the donors and all that stuff, right? So we're having constantly new halachic things that are going on. And yes, a person who is navon is a person who is able to study the patterns, study the Gemara, study the halacha, Rishonim, Achronim, etc., and able to apply the principles of law, of the Jewish law, into today's things that were not there in the past situations. Yeah. Okay. So let's, Nerea, let's hear your review.
So, I'm just doing this in case there's anybody who has difficulty with the Hebrew, just so that we're all on the same page in terms of the flow of ideas. So I'm just literally going to read through the flow of ideas. So the Rochav of Chochma is the actual flow of the revealed intellect from its source. And actually that was in the previous paragraph, he called that the Barak HaMavrik. It's that experience of when you have a flash of an idea coming into your head, and you say, where does that come from? Chochma, like, what is it? So this is the Rochav of Chochma. And in the mashal of the spring coming up from the ground, this is the spring, this is the revealed spring that we mentioned before. So it's actually the spring as you see it above the ground. The Koach HaMaskil, which was the Tohom, which was below the ground. They were the Giddim that were coming, the veins of water that were going through the earth, and that was the Orech. And now you have the spring that you can see on the surface of, you see the water, and that is the Rochav of Chochma. It's also called Chochma of Chochma, and it's the body of the Yud of Chochma. And I'll show you the same diagram, but we'll see it again. So then we have, it's interesting that it's so brief about the Rochav of Chochma. And most of us would think, oh, that's the width. But as Mila explained, it's the Orech, it's the length of Chochma, which is the most important. It's the power to bring down the essential intellect and enclose or manifest it into the explanations of Bina. So the Orech of Chochma is the power to discover the reasons and explanations of, the power to discover the reasons and explanations of Bina comes from the Orech of Chochma. The Orech of Chochma is called Bina of Chochma, and in Sefer Yetzirah, it's called Haven de Chochma, which means the understanding aspect of Chochma. The lower kutz or thorn, that's the translation that I have, of the Yud, which is rooted higher than the body of the Yud, in the higher thorn of the Yud, which is the Omek of Chochma. According to the Omek, which is the betel to receive from the Koach HaMaskil, so will be the ability to nullify and set oneself aside and give over the intellect to Bina. In other words, the ability of the Orech is proportional to the Omek. And that's what we've really been discussing. The ability to bring something down, to bring it down into explanations is rooted in not so much in, it's not rooted in the Rochav, it's rooted in the Omek. So before I go on to the Navon, I want to share the image. I'm going to stop sharing this.
Yeah.
Was it not like that?
It's better than
Try that.
I don't know who is
What
not.
else you want YouTube?
There we go. Okay. So this is basically the same as Mila was showing you. This is the Yud of Chochma. And I find it so, he talks about something so abstract, and then you come and you see it in a visual form. So we know that the Yud represents Chochma, and there's this upper kutz, this upper thorn, which reaches upwards, and that is the Omek of Chochma. This body of the Yud of Chochma is the Rochav of Chochma. You see the width of it. And then the Orech is this part that is coming down, that's bringing it down and will bring it into Bina. So I don't know if it's confusing for people, but, usually we think of Keter and Chochma and Bina as being entities unto themselves. But here we have to kind of go beyond that and understand that within Chochma, there are 10 Sfirot. So within Chochma, there's Keter of Chochma, there's Chochma of Chochma, and Bina of Chochma, and actually also Midot of Chochma. So he's explaining that the Omek of Chochma is called the Keter of Chochma. It's not just to kind of give us more information to confuse us, but if you have an idea of what Keter is, it helps you to then understand Omek, because you can understand, I don't want to say one thing from another, but it gives you different ways of looking at it. So the Rochav is like Chochma of Chochma, and the Orech is Bina of Chochma. It's really giving, I find that what it does is it's giving you extra language to understand a concept which is really abstract. Okay. So let's go back to the summary. So now we have this issue of, in the times of Moshe Rabbeinu, Chachamim, which are people of Rochav of Chochma, could be found, but not Nevonim, people of Orech of Chochma. And I'll show you the source of it in Devarim. But first, let's just have a look. Nevonim, the power to be understanding in wisdom, Aven de Chochma. Due to this, he can understand new insights from the seichel he heard from his teacher, and from there draw down into Bina the discovery of new explanations regarding a particular idea. This is to be wise in understanding, or chacham b'bina. The Natvon understands one thing from another. Devar mitoch devar. This will be explained further in chapter 2 and 3. So what I want to do is just show you, I have a question on this, but it's really interesting to see where this is in the Chumash itself. Just one moment. I have to just find it. It takes place very much, actually, at the very beginning of Devarim, where it's the 13th line of Devarim. So Moshe Rabbeinu is talking about what happened throughout the whole Torah. These are the words which Moshe Rabbeinu spoke to all of Israel. Oops. And on the 13th line, it says, first of all, the 12th line, it says, how can I bear your trouble, your burden, and your strife all by myself? So it says, you answered me, prepare for yourselves wise and understanding men, known among your tribes, and I will make them heads over you. Can you see the Hebrew here?
Yeah.
I'm having, I
Yeah,
can't
we
see
see
it.
Hebrew.
I must move this over. Okay. Try and see it. So you see here, it says, Havu lachem anashim chachamim unavonim. So men who are chachamim, wise, unavonim, and that's what we talk about. V'yiduim l'shiftechem v'asimem b'reshechem. So then what happens is, look, Mila, I don't know, I have a question here. I always thought it was Chochma, Bina, and Dat, but here the literal...
That are known, yiduim that are known. This is
that are known
among your tribes. So yeah, l'shiftichem, right? It's interesting. I'm sure, the deeper understanding in it, right? Chachamim nuvanim v'yiduim l'shiftichem, right? That they are known among your tribes, v'asimam b'roshechem, and I will put them as your heads.
Right. But I would imagine that there's a remez there to Dat as well, somehow. Right. The pshat is that they are known. Yeah. So so I took the heads of your tribes, wise men and well-known. So here we see Ve'ekach et rashei shivtechehem anashim chachamim v'yoduim. So where's the Navonim?
Exactly.
So this is the question. And I made them heads over you, leaders of thousands, leaders, blah, blah. And actually, if you look at the Rashi asked the question, what are the Navonim? Let me just show the Rashi. This is on Chabad.org. They have a very good way of showing it. And so he says, wise men and well-known, but understanding men I could not find. Navonim I couldn't find. This is one of the 7 qualities which Yitro described to Moshe, but Moshe found only 3 of them, righteous, wise, and
Tzadikim,
well-known.
chachamim, v'yiduim. Right. He did not find Navonim.
And he asks as well, what are Navonim? Earlier, here, Navonim is somebody who understands one thing from another, as it says here in the text as well. And then he says, I don't know how relevant this is, but it might be interesting just to look at it. This is what Arius asked Rabbi Yossi, what is the difference between wise men, chachamim, and understanding men, navonim? Rabbi Yossi said, a wise man is like a rich money changer. When people bring him dinars to examine, he examines them. When they do not bring money to him, he sits doing nothing. And navonim, an understanding man, however, is like a merchant money changer. When they bring him money to examine, he examines it. And when they do not bring it to him, he goes out and brings his own money, i.e., he does not wait for people to come to him. He goes to them.
It's so interesting. Wow, I did not know about this, Rashi. It's beautiful. Thank you, Naria.
Can you explain the Rashi a little bit? Like what sparks?
It's a self-motivation. You see, Chachamim looks like he's a wise man, but the person who is in a passive mode. Bina let me ask you that. This quality is more or less, a feminine quality. We see that in women. When things are not happening, woman is going to make it happen. You know what I mean? It's not going to be like sitting and waiting. Oh, no, like it's we see that a lot in women. It's the idea of constantly seeking things, to resolve problems and issues, and not sitting and waiting that people are going to come to you. Oh, you have this problem, let me solve it for you, right? It's like no, you don't passively sit and wait, like you're actively searching. So this is what Navon means. And with your experience, by you constantly searching and looking for answers, the answers will come to you. This is where Yigia takes place. If a person is presented with a problem, you don't just sit b'chibuk yadayim and wait when somebody will come to you to resolve this to you. Or I'm going to use my own powers of understanding. That's chacham. If you actually happen to be a wise man, maybe you're going to find the wise answers to the problems. But sometimes the problems are beyond us. And a Navon doesn't sit and wait, but he goes out and he searches for solutions. He takes initiatives. Okay, well, I cannot figure this out. Let me go read this. Let me go read that. Let me ask that person. It's like there is a movement, and that's what bittul is. Because the way bittul is explained in Eastern philosophies is the passive mode of receiving, but it's not actually. Yigia is an active state. It's an active state of search, and when a person looks, they'll find.
So there's one more thing that I want to add here, which is I thought that the explanation in the English translation in the footnote was quite useful. So it's footnote 56 on page 28. And it's talking about, not finding Navonim. Thus, the Talmud states that although wise men, chachamim, could be found, men of understanding, Navonim, could not be found, thus indicating the superiority of this aspect of understanding over and above wisdom itself. That is, although a person might grasp the abstract reality of a matter as it is in and of itself, he may nonetheless lack understanding of how this truth applies to himself in actuality and practicality, or how to draw it forth into revelation. For example, a person may come to acknowledge the true reality of the singular, pre-existent, intrinsic, and essential being of Hashem, blessed be He, and His utter limitlessness and dominion over all existence, Himself included, and yet remain entirely cognitively dissonant of the reality and presence of Hashem in practice. So I don't know, that became a little bit complicated, but he's just saying that you can understand something in theory, possibly, and not necessarily how to apply it. And it can even be in relation to Hashem that we do that we have beliefs, but not necessarily do we know how to really bring it down into our lives.
Yeah, that reminds me about Bloom's taxonomy. Anybody is familiar with that? Yeah, it's a cute. He actually describes that the highest level is actually application. And this is what distinguishes a Rav versus not a Rav. Because it's not about a theory, it's about a practical application to a specific situation of that particular law. So Ravs pretty much use it. They should be using it, put it this way. I don't know what they exactly do, but yeah, a Rav, better be a Nova, right?
Do you want to take a look at the questions and move on?
Yes, okay. It sounds like a Novan is a leader. Yeah, he looks to connect ideas and people. May not necessarily for that particular, yeah, but that's I don't know if Navon is a shadchan. You understand what I mean? I'm not sure if he's a shaliach type of thing. Navon is still an intellectual capacity of self-generating. It's still self-generated. You see, a shadchan doesn't have to be necessarily self-generating. He just makes connections, right? Oh, you're a good doctor, or you are sick? Okay, here we go. What's your specialty? Teeth, no problem. She has a problem with teeth, so I'm connecting you. There are actually people like that. They make a lot of money, right? They know vast knowledge of, who to connect with who. They're called brokers. Yeah, that's what it is. It's like, so then, oh, you need this, you need that. Okay, I'm connecting you. That's not what Navon is, although it does take, a great, vast knowledge of Navon. But in its pure state, it seems that Navon is a person who is able to tap into his own koach hamaskil. And because he's capable of having that, that experience, he's able to lower himself down. Didn't we say earlier that Orech depends on Omeg? So if Orech depends on Omeg, meaning my ability to lower deeper is an indicator that of me, being able to receive. And a lot of times, what happens when people ask us questions that are beyond us? What do? We go back to learning, right? Let me read that again. What happens when we read that again? We go into our Omeg. That's just naturally what we do. When our kids ask us questions that we never thought about. Like, yeah, that's actually a very good question. What do? We go back to where this idea is mentioned. And then we study it again so we can actually find an answer. So we go back to our Omeg to receive it in a better way so we can actually answer that question. Okay, initiative. Yeah, that's definitely the component based on the Rashi that Naria read. Gitti, yes. The other one seems to be passively waiting, and that merchant who is actually going out and finding the money. Okay, but to do that dafka out of the omek and not to manipulate. No, we're not forcing the outcome. If a person didn't understand, you cannot manipulate an answer to that child, so you are like, stay within the realm of authority. Children don't appreciate that. Nobody appreciates that, right? When we fabricate answers, we don't need to fabricate answers. We could just say, I don't know. That's a very good question. Let me look deeper into it. That's, I would say, the most authentic answer that we could provide to our children, and they'll actually respect us for that, as opposed to trying to fabricate a generic answer just to shut them up. Okay, but to do that, self-leadership, okay? Can you repeat the difference between active yegiya and passive bittul? And which one Chochma, which one Bina? I'll tell you, it's a funny thing because bittul has two aspects. Bittul does have that passive recipient. I actually heard a beautiful story about the Frierdiker Rebbe and the Rebbe Rochav. When Rebbe Rochav used to give out ma'amarim, the way it was done is that the Frierdiker Rebbe would sit right across the room from him, right in front of him, and the Rebbe Rochav would give a mimer. And that's how it always was. And I don't know exactly what happened, but the Frierdiker Rebbe wasn't there by one mimer. And there's another great chassid was appointed for that role by the Rebbe, to sit across the Rebbe so the Rebbe could say a mimer. And that guy was standing, it was a phenomenal chassid. I don't even know his name, but whatever. It wasn't just Chaim Yankel, So he was sitting there and he was, receiving from the Rebbe. He was very serious. He prepared himself and all that, and he's standing in front. And the Rebbe started the mimer. He continued a little bit, and then he said he cannot continue because of the machshava zara that person had. Can you imagine what happened to that person? All the Chassidim wanted to eat him up. They're like, what was that machshava zara? And he refused to say, but they didn't leave him alone. You can imagine, right? Like they just lost a mimer. The Rebbe went back to his room. They probably lynched him. They're like, no, you have to tell us, what was that machshava zara? What was that machshava zara? So besides the fact that he probably was exceptionally embarrassed, or whatever the story was, that he just, felt him a loser, whatever. So what was a machshava zara? But Taka, what was a machshava zara? He wasn't thinking about anything else. But while the Rebbe was saying the mimer, after a few passages, he realized that he already heard the mimer. The Rebbe is repeating the mimer. Understand? And that blew the whole thing. What was happening in his mind? It's a perfect example of bittul. You're hearing the Rebbe speaking, right? And you're already making a connection that you already heard this mimer. You understand what happened? That means he was not in a state of bittul. He was in a state of his own mind. He remained in his own metzius, where for sure, the Frierdiker Rebbe obviously was raised by Rebbe Rochav, and we have a little glimpse of the type of chinuch he received by the Rebbe Rochav. There was, you had to be in a state of bittul for constantly, and on what missions the Rebbe, sent the Frierdiker Rebbe. It's phenomenal. Please read, the Frierdiker Rebbe's memoirs are exceptional, especially Likutei Divurim and all that. But yeah, so what is that? So then it's actually both. There is a place when we receive. It even says about Rabbi Hillel that when he received, we're talking about 8 hours straight from the Mittel Rebbe. You don't move. Can you imagine this? I can't even imagine that. I don't know if I'm capable of doing this. But the Rabbi Hillel, these Chassidim were in complete silence, listening to the receiving from the Mittel Rebbe. Once that received, right, then he would argue with the Rebbe. But you said this and that, and when you said that over there, and how come it makes sense that? So there are both states. There is that passive bittul where we just remove ourselves from ourselves, and we want to receive. We want to upgrade our thinking.
But Mila, I think that the word passive is not correct. It's like,
It's not. Yeah.
because there's
What would that be?
something called active listening. You know,
Okay, active listening, fine.
that we have these days. It's called active listening. We know what that is. And that's a kind of a bitul. It's active. We think that receiving is passive. Receiving is not passive necessarily. If it's like you describe, if it's real receiving. And we spoke about that before, that the bitul of the makabel awakens the bitul of the mashpia.
Exactly. And by this story, the Frierdiker Rebbe, it's actually shut him off, basically. The
Yeah.
fact that he had, I heard this mimer already, that already was a lack of bittul on his end. And it was like, I can't give. There's nobody to give to. Like, okay, bye, guys. I've
And
given
in a
it.
way, that's also, there's another question there. It's not going to answer the question, but it's almost like the person made a bechein. They went from yesh to yesh. They weren't open to the ayin. They're saying, oh, I know this. I mean, maybe the Rebbe Rochav was starting from that mimer and then going to go on somewhere. And he was already saying yesh to yesh, I know what this is, as opposed to being open to the ayin. And that's where the bechein comes in. When we say, oh, I know what this is, and make the connection with something that we know. And
So it's
we're not
familiar to familiar, meaning we don't allow the unknown to enter. It's like, oh, I know this already. Okay, so then why are you here? And it's interestingly, but the Tzemach Tzedek a lot of times repeated the same mamarim, so with Alter Rebbe. But each one was a different thing.
Will there be a minute for questions after, like, verbal questions? Just let me know when. I'm gonna go on mute again.
Okay, so let's look at what we have already in the chat. Can you repeat the difference between active yigi and passive bittul? So there is, I guess, with the term that Neria presents, it's actually a beautiful term. It's active listening. So there's no passive. Bittul is not necessarily a passive thing. It's not. Can we call it passive? I don't think so. It's a yigia of the mind to remain without the bechein. That active listening is also a yigia, not to draw conclusions, remain open, etc., etc. And then after that, try to understand it within the knowledge that was already presented. Does that make sense? That's already a digestive period, where we need to digest the information. And then, yes, we take out our brain back and, try to make sense out of it with the given tools that we receive. Because we don't forget what we learned. We shouldn't forget what we learned. But at the time of giving, we need to be, as receptive as possible. Like the thief who prays before he prays. Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, when there's a detachment of the intellect and application. And what's the difference between application and bechein? It's a very good question. I myself still researching the answer for that. What's the difference between application and bechein? I think application is something that comes naturally. It's a result of being connected to something deep, because the mashalim are being born within the mashpia. It's a natural thing. It's not something like, I've learned this concept. What mashal should I give to it? Does that make sense? Like, usually, I don't know, by me, the mashalim are being born as I am. It happens randomly, at different times. It's not like, what mashal should I? No, it's like, for example, recently I was like writing something about, for my students about planting. And then I thought to myself, oh my gosh, this is a perfect example for something that I learned, in Chassidus. Does that make sense? Like, it's like I wasn't forcing this mashal to come. There was my mind working on the Chassidic concept in the back, meaning it was like kind of like in the back of my mind, and then a mashal approached me, and I was like, oh, this is a great connection to that. So the mashal was born, they are being born automatically. It's not something that person forces. And on the contrary, go and force. Can any writer write on demand? I mean, so you know, a painter paint on demand. That's already like when it becomes commercialized, right? Creative people that have this inspiration that they, you know, waiting for, and then, you know, when that comes, that state of flow, they could produce phenomenal things. But when it's forced, it's usually very flat. No, I mean, that's what I'm getting from people from creative crowd that I hang around with. They just, they don't, that's why they're always poor, you know, unless they have a very good guy who sells the product very expensive. Because, you know, you can be a painter 9-to-5 job, you know, okay, you came, okay, now you have to paint. Like, it's not, doesn't happen usually that way. I mean, unless they are so into the, on the contrary, when they're in that flow, they don't sleep at night, and they paint day and night, day and night, day and night for like a week, and then they plot, you know, and then they go on the recovery table. Okay, and what the difference between application and mechin? Well, I don't know. We'll post when we will have that clarity. And on Naria, you have the clarity between application and mechin.
No, I think what you said is correct, is that first of all, it is open-ended. I think my feeling is that the bechen, what happens is that you really shut down the ayin, shut down being open to learning something new, and you bring something down too quickly, and so you make a connection to something you already know, and then you're just going yesh to yesh, and you never learn anything new. Not you, like that's what happens. And as women, we do that a lot. Our nature is to make a bechen. We want things to be very practical, and it's hard for us to just stay with that iron, with that not knowing. I think it's an important thing to be able to use the power of not knowing in our lives as well, to just stay with the not knowing, and not always to shut down the question with an answer, which is very often to bring about a bechen. That's what I can say right now. So to sit with discomfort, it is uncomfortable. We want to know because we think that by knowing we control, but actually it's not so true. It just feels like we're more in control when we think we know something.
Well, we could substitute the word discomfort with curiosity. Oh, I wonder how this will develop further. Instead of saying, oh, I'm so uncomfortable, this is so uncomfortable, you know, it's a curiosity, you know, like let's see how this will unfold.
Right.
Let's see what kind of ideas Hashem will send my way in the morning when we go to bed. You know, we don't have to force the outcome. So let's keep it.
Look, there's a natural process of we hear things, and of course we're going to make connections to what we already know. But I think there's a difference between, you know, I think we saw, for example, last week when we were talking about the Koach HaMaskil, it really stimulated people, you know, to really think about things. And that's a good thing. But I think like shutting it down and saying, I know what it is and it's this, as opposed to letting it be something that really stimulates your mind, and staying open to the idea that you don't know fully what it is, but that you're open to exploring further is different than saying, okay, I got it, let's move on.
Right. So I think, Saratova, do you want to ask your question orally? It's a long text. Yeah. Yeah? Saratova.
Are you
read
still with
what
us?
I'll read what she wrote.
Is she
This is how-
online or she stepped
But
out?
no, I'm here. So I tried to write it. You understand? In other words, I'm thinking if we're going to do this, the Hispanus for the next month. So I don't really know how to do Hispanus, but for me, it's either or. Either I'm doing Pesach stuff or I'm stopping and taking a break and I'm going to review some Shara Yichud. I don't believe that's what we're supposed to do. Like, okay, now take a break and review Shara Yichud. Obviously, you want integration. So, but it seems to me that any integration I would do, I would immediately, like I already have in my mind a daily Nakuda about Pesach, read a line and then say, oh, this connects to Pesach this way. And you'll probably say, no, you're doing a Bechin. So I'm sort of like, I'm finished before I start because I realize that whatever I'll do will be a Bechin. So why do it? I don't know how to. It's definitely not supposed to be either or. Either do Pesach or then take a break and do this. And it's not supposed to be Bechin. Whatever the third one is, the third option, I don't know what it is, and I don't know how to do it. So I don't know how to review Shari Yichud over the next month.
That's okay. So let me try to answer that. How about one of the practical things could be is to take a flow chart, right? Print it out and just to, view, the flow of what we've learned up until now. That should not take more than 5 minutes a day. You dive in, we do things. And it's true the Pesach is very overwhelming experience and we kind of go into this, but we should not, I don't know, we don't have to go into Pesach with a full golus, like, oh my gosh, what are we going to do? And then
wait. I'm sorry. I don't want to interrupt you. I'm not saying that at all. I'm happy to take 10 minutes here and there and then do the next line and the next line and do, half a paragraph of Shari Yichud. But that's either or. Okay, now I'm taking a break and I'm going to do Shari Yichud. Or now I'm taking a break and I'm going to look at the flow chart. That's either or. That's not integration. I don't believe you want me to do either or. I believe you want me to do integration, and I don't know how to do integrative learning without doing a Bechin.
So just don't do a Bechin. Just say, okay, what's a Bechin? Forget about application for now. I think we are very prematurely into application. No application. Application is just like, I'm just learning these concepts. That's all. That's the opening statement. These are the 3 questions asked, blah, blah, blah. It could be very analytical. That's fine. The Iyun is analysis. And analysis, it's an open-ended analysis. The analysis cannot be concluded until the end of research.
So you're not okay with me every time I review Shari Yichud, say, okay, how is this a step in my freedom? You're not okay with that?
You could, but don't try to force the outcome. You ask that question, go to sleep with it. And Hashem will give you the answer. You don't have to force then and there. How is it going to help you step into your freedom? Or how in the world, this is going to, like, for example, we're doing something now, right? We are accessing our moichin right now. This is what avodas moichin. We're accessing our moichin, and we're trying to expand the borders of Eretz Israel. Do you know how many people are going to laugh into our face like we're crazy? These guys are militants, and they have X, Y, and Z, and they're sending 1,000 drones, and you're going to be sitting here with your moichin trying to expand the borders of Eretz Israel? But it's not my job. My job is to do my avodas moichin, period. How is that going to affect the expansion of the borders of Eretz Israel? That's not my question to answer. That's the Rebbe's part, because he's the one who brought us into this game, right? I guess he knows what he's talking about. So I need to have emunah and bitachon, in the words of the Rebbe, and I'm going to do the best what I could do with my moichin, because this is a domain that I can't control. But is that something that I'm not planning on taking, Uzi and going shooting Arabs in Eretz Israel. I'm not going to do that. Yeah, because that's not necessarily what the Rebbe told us to do. Now, the same way, how a yeshiva bacher who's sitting and studying Torah right now in a yeshiva going to help the soldiers win the war? I'm not that spiritual leader to see the connections and give answers of how, because that's beyond me, and I know my place. But what I do also know, if the Rebbe gives an instruction, we need to fulfill it, even though it does not make any sense according to my seichel.
No, wait, I don't have that question. I'm just asking a homework question in terms of, is it okay if every day or every other day I review the next piece and the next piece of Shari Yichud, but I connect it to Pesach? Because otherwise, quite honestly, I don't have the motivation because, we have all these people in the
We're
world that
talking,
say like,
yes,
I just didn't have the time to do it, meaning they weren't motivated. So for me to be motivated, I have to connect the learning every day to Pesach. What does it have to do with Pesach in terms of Haskalah? That's just the way my mind works.
fine. I think one of the biggest themes of Pesach is coming out of our own Mitzrayim, right? What is
Okay.
Mitzrayim? Mitzrayim is our rigid way of thinking, in my opinion. We have a certain paradigm of thinking that we may not necessarily be aware of. Okay. And for me, if I uncover my limiting paradigm, that's identifying my Mitzrayim and allowing something greater to enter by first becoming aware of it. And secondly, by entertaining a better idea. How can I think greater than that? That's all. Just asking that open-ended questions without forcing, without forcing the outcome, and let the subconscious mind, the omek, my bittul, and everything else give me the answer, be the right tool to provide me with that answer. It may or may not come. It maybe will come, and I'm not, aware of it. But yeah, active searching, asking that question over and over again. How can I think greater than that? It's again, but that's my application of it. It doesn't have to be yours. I'm sure your moichin will provide you with your a set of tools and ideas. Okay, so let's go. We are pretty much at 11:30 now. The question is, isn't a mashal also an application? No, mashal is not an application at all. Mashal is providing a same pattern that the nimshal has. We're finding something in the world that has a certain aspect of that pattern. Now, that's why a lot of times there are few mashalim given on one concept, and each Gashmi's Dike mashal provides a certain aspect of that pattern. Yeah, for example, we're going to go later on. If you stay with Shari Yichud, there are 5 mashalim on the light of Hashem. I don't know, 4 mashalim of Etzem V'Spashtus, 5 mashalim of Helen V'Gilui. So it's like, so now you really need to have 5 mashalim of Helen V'Gilui? Yeah, because there's no Gashmi's Dike mashal that will provide, a wholesome explanation of the light of Hashem. So they are taking bits and pieces, and then, we really need to do his bonus on this mashalim so we can actually understand how nimshal works. And, we could create a chart to understand what properties of the mashal is being used right now. Okay, so let's go on a breakout room. Naria, do you have anything to add?
No.
Okay, so we're going to go like about 10 minutes on it is going to be a little bit over our usual time. But please feel free to discuss what we've learned. You want to create your mind map on that, please do so. We're going to be back. We're going to be back soon. Please do not leave, because this is important part. I'm not quite sure how to do the breakout rooms. I just recently updated my do you see that? Naria, you're a co-host, so do you see where that is?
Breakout rooms
Yeah.
automatically.
Oh yeah, I found it. Okay, great.
Oh,
Oh, you found it? You want to do it?
I can do it because I haven't done it before.
Okay, so we're going to do 5 rooms. Baruch Hashem, we are 19 people here, so that should be enough people. no, we're going to do 4 rooms because we're not going to go. Okay. Hatzlacha. Please be back, and we'll be here in a few minutes. Back.
So I guess these 3 people they're not really there right now. 'Cause
Yeah, I'm just wondering what. But yeah, but I guess, there is enough people in those rooms. So,
yeah.
yeah.
Oh, let's see, maybe Cody will join.
Yeah.
Cody,
So
do you want to
let's-
join a breakout room? We're not hearing you. You muted. You can unmute. Wait, you're muted. I can't hear you. Oh,
Okay, now
Yeah.
you can hear me. Well, what I have to say is not so interesting. I said I cannot go now. I have to leave.
Okay, no problem. All right. Yeah, we ran over a little bit. Isn't it strange that on the short
What now? If I can speak up, I find that so much is gained in a breakaway room. I think it's so incredible. It really internalizes an idea. Like you chew it over, and different people, each one is so enriching and adding a point. If it's to this side or it's to that side, and that Kal v'chaimer, not Kal v'chaimer, how you say chaimer v'vein or whatever it is. So good.
Wonderful.
Beautiful.
Do you want to share an insight that you got, Gitty? Just one thing?
So we were chewing over this application versus mushel. So
Versus the pain, I thought also. What if there's a difference?
And the overheen, exactly. So there are a few things here. And then Malka brought in the idea of takeaway, right? Like the takeaways in the chitas, in the hyenas. And my starting premise that I came away from your class, from the teaching is of today, is that you mentioned you gave a beautiful example of how the Rebbe gives us ideas, and we have to leave open that that there's more there, and leave space for it and see how it plays out, but do give it the space. And then so I'm thinking, oh, that is actually a mushal, because isn't a Rebbe and Talmud such a prominent mushal in Chassidus? So Sarah, you're there. Shared it was very nice. Sarah, you're there. You can take up from here.
No, go ahead.
No, go ahead. You take up from here. I'm just like, that was
We were discussing, and please help me, Mila, if I understood you correctly. I thought to myself, and tell me if it's right, that there is a little bit of a difference between application and bechen. And the way I could understand it is taking it from a different world, from klipat noga, from math, from computers. You learn something, you just start getting that idea, right? So maybe that is from koach hamaskil. And then the question was, what is a rochav? So you understand, you start understanding that formula, or you start understanding that whatever that concept is, yeah? That is the rochav, right? Now, how do you know that you really understood it? So now take that mathematical thing and apply it, but that is not a bechen at all. Am I correct? Is this assumption correct? So when I apply it, I taught math, yeah? I'm asking the students, now you understood it, now solve this and this example. They apply it, yeah? But it doesn't show any bechen at all. This is just showing that the understanding really took place. Am I correct? Is this correct, Mila?
Yeah.
So it
So
is
like-
different than bechen. It is different than bechen. Is that correct?
Bechen is a broader thing. Bechen is basically, in order for us to really understand Bechen, we need to delve into conscious spilos there. When he describes that a person really shuts down the flow of his bonus, he has to shut it down. It's like a man who needs to marry, he needs to separate himself from his father and mother, which is his Chochma and Bina, right? He needs to end that relationship, and he better end that relationship because that's going to ruin his relationship with his wife, right? We all know about, issues that might arise in a marriage, right? When parents are still, involved, and emotionally connected to the man. And the Torah commands you have to separate yourself from your parents, and you marry a wife, right? And then you give birth to children, right? So that concept is also works in Ruchnias on a third level, where we separate ourselves from our Chochma and Bina, and we marry, meaning we force the moichin to provide a conclusion, which is called a bechein, right? And that bechein becomes moach de katnos. It becomes a moach on its own, and we have midas because of that. Okay, which is love and fear of God. Right now, a bechein is not necessarily a bad thing. Understand? There is time and place for bechein to take place because we all need to get married at one point, right? However, it's actually a very good thing for a person on that particular level, because how else is he going to do? Not get married, stay in his parents' home all day long? You understand? So it's like we can't. Now, when we upgrade, and I think this is what the Rebbe is forcing us, move away from avodas hamides. That's mashal. That's that model that I just discussed. That works for avodas hamides perfectly, right? But the Rebbe says, okay, leave that now. Now that was the golos, because it's moach de katnos. Right now we need to move. I'm providing you a new paradigm of thinking. Okay, and that's moach de gadlus. That's das elyon. Okay, das elyon is a whole different awareness. Das elyon, not only that my relationship with my chachma and bina are going to be preventing me from having proper midas, that I need to actually separate them. On the contrary, the deeper I go into his bonanus, the deeper I go into my relationship with Chochma and Bina, into Koach HaMaskil, and further, the more midas I'm going to have. So I should not fear to have a little bechein. You understand what I mean? It's like you have access to, Hashem is opening to us treasures that were closed. And we're like, you know what, just give me my salary. Okay, that's it. Like, just give me this, $5. Okay. I'm like, and I'm going to go buy myself bread. Like, how silly would that be? Right? Listen, if that's all what was available, because everybody was in such poverty. So yeah, give me $5 because that's all what was allowed to take. Yes, give me full $5. Okay. But now Hashem is giving us unlimited to force the intellect for a bechein and saying like, okay, just give me this $5. It's a silly thing. Like, okay, just remain a little bit longer. You'll become a billionaire. Okay. Just relax. So that's kind of a mushal. That's, it kind of like think to myself. So there's no need to force. It's like, we don't have pupils right now, right? It's not like, as teachers, I understand you, Sarah, sometimes we need to like, okay, what's the point of this, mathematical formula? I need to have an application for it, right? So now that's true. An application as a bechein, there's a fine line behind it. It's like bechein would begin and therefore, and then you fill in the blank, right? Therefore, 1, 2, 3. Now, sometimes it's good. For example, when we learn the Sikha of the Rebbe, right? The Avodah Samoichin Sikha. Therefore, we need to create this group and study. That was our bechein. There's nothing wrong with that bechein, meaning the application, whatever you want to call it. So therefore,
No, slicha, I'm sorry, Mila. I was just thinking that there is a difference between application and bechein. I thought that application is part of the understanding still,
True,
not
but
avodat midot.
But no, you're right, because you're bringing into it goes through the midas. You understand what I mean? It's midas is not necessarily a work of emotions. Midas is also to do, not to do. Understand what I mean? It's not necessarily the emotional response. In Chassidus, midas may not necessarily mean. For example, somebody asked, I think, a question: what does halachic ruling had to do with midas of seichel? Remember that was? When we talked about Chochma and Bina, right? We gave a mashal in Seichel Asiya, and then there was a Seichel of Midas, if you remember that line, when we talked about the Talmudic discussion. So yeah, go back into text, you'll see that it says, and this is the Seichel of Midas. And somebody asked the question, what this has to do with Midas? Well, because the ruling, kosher, not kosher, is Midas. We're not thinking about that. But the mashal, the famous mashal is about building a house. Right, Bezrat Hashem, once we learn more the levels and says restalshals, we'll understand that there's a oneg, there's a ratzon, there's a thinking part about it, component, and then are we actually doing it? Are we doing it? We're not doing it. Then that's going to be chagat of it, right? And then nehi, are we actually going to be doing it? Am I calling the construction company like it's concrete maise already? And we're calculating the budget and blah, blah, blah. So then there's another point of recalculations, because if we look at the kidneys, they look like brain. It's a small brain, right? The kidneys are in the form of right and left brain. And then, we're like, yes, we do it. That's it. And then the malchus comes out as a practical, step of doing things. And there's a constant revision between the keser has to be constantly influencing our decisions, because we all know at one point project is like, I'm not interested in this anymore. Like, this is taking me too much. There's too many details into this. How to paint my walls, what kind of faucets I need to buy, what kind of tiles. Have you ever done construction? You know what I'm talking about? What furniture? And at one point you're like, okay, I don't want to deal with this anymore. Like the oneg is killed already. And how can you remedy this? You need to go back to your vision, right? You need to go back to your pleasure that you had when you saw yourself sitting in that beautiful house. And that pleasure gonna kick in the ratzon to go through and survive and thrive through all the pratim until it actually comes into action, right? And if that is not clear, then usually people don't enjoy. For example, like we're gonna be cleaning for Pesach, right? Why we need to do that? Because of the Seder night. That's why we're doing it. So we can come to Seder night completely depleted of any energy, of anything. So we need to keep that oneg of us sitting relaxed and beautiful and thinking about Geula, because this is the process, the 4 cups and et cetera, and the Haggadah literally takes us out of Golus if we do it properly, right? So if we're killing ourselves with the pratim without revisiting the klal, why we're doing it, this is going to be our biggest mitzrayim, right? We're coming to, like, okay, yeah.
When I flew from New York, from Miami to Israel recently, I watched a film about the creation of the atom bomb. And just speaking to Sarah, who's a mathematician, who teaches, okay, you taught, you
I
using a
taught,
couple of math.
yeah.
You taught,
Just
okay.
taught.
So there, there was theory that they had to put it into practice ultimately. And they had to be very careful that they had enough information, because one of the things they weren't sure was if they set off an atom bomb, would it spark something in the atmosphere that would destroy the entire world? Now, so they had to really make sure that what they had in theory and what would come out as application was not they couldn't do it prematurely. And I don't know if that's such a good mashal for what we're speaking about, but I really think that, maybe I don't want people to get too caught up in the bechein, this whole thing about, oh, am I making a bechein? Should I stop thinking about it? I think you have to relax about it, but the point is really to do the work with the text. Okay, this is a difficult time to do it, but just keep going back to the text. It's kind of like a math student, where they're trying to, do complicated math and they don't know the axioms, they don't know the rules. So we're just in the beginning of learning about a process. The whole of chapter 1, which is 20 paragraphs, is one process. It's one big idea, and it's made up of 20 smaller pieces. So now we're on piece number 7. We can't draw a conclusion about anything really. But at the same time, these ideas can stimulate us to think about other things. But if we shut it down too much, we won't be open to getting a new paradigm, because really what this is going to offer us is a new paradigm, a new way of seeing the world. I mean, even for me, the koach maskil is the beginning of a new paradigm. Like, to know that there's a koach maskil inside of me is like, wow, it's an opening into, a real iron of like, oh, there's a different possibility that I didn't know about. But I don't know the application of it yet, because we just in Chochma, we didn't even go into Bina and Das yet. It's like a third of the way through of something that we even know we don't know. And I have to say that at a certain point in studying Shara Yehud, I'd gone into the later chapters, I suddenly understood that there was so much I didn't understand. Like, it was a very real experience of like standing kind of on the edge of the universe and looking out at this vast expanse. And it's a very humbling experience. And, that was partially because we were trained just to stay with the information, just to, pretend that you're at school again, and to just work over the ideas so that you know them well. Go back, he's basically giving us rules, learn the rules, and don't try and skip to having to know how to apply to our lives, without shutting down the excitement that it might, present at, whatever's coming up in your mind, not to shut that down, but still to stay open and to go back to really learning it so that you know it well. Because we're building on, it's like really like mathematics, we're building a structure. And yeah, so that's really the point of it, is to say, we're just starting here. and don't shut yourself down, but also don't shut down the process. So yeah, of course, there's benefit in discussion, but it's premature when I don't know if this is a correct mashal, but when Mila was talking about, giving birth to children, I was thinking like, if you have two people who are, teenagers giving birth to children, it's premature. It's premature to give birth to children when you don't yet have the full structure and knowledge of life that a 20-year-old or a 25-year-old has. So, the bechein is just about that it's a little bit premature, but it shouldn't stop you from thinking or making connections, but don't shut it down. Say, oh, now right now I can go and, like reorganize my entire life. No, you don't have the whole picture yet. That's basically really what it is. And the truth is, the way that I study most of Chassidus is in order to have a bechein. The Rebbe gives over Sikha, and he wants us to have a bechein. He wants us to apply it. That's the whole point of Chassidus. And that's why this is a different kind of paradigm. We're not looking to apply it. It will change us rather than us applying it to our lives. Something has to change in us before it can be applied. And now it's just premature because we don't have the full picture. We, in the middle of the puzzle, we don't see what the picture is. We have no clue, really. We just have, 7 pieces, and that's not even halfway through.
But Nuria, can I say something? I could listen while in the next 2 weeks, while I'm in my house, I could kind of listen to, reviews. I could just have it play in the background. I don't know how much I'm really going to really hear it. I'll just play it. I could do that. I don't believe that's what you want me to do. And then obviously over Pesach, what am I going to do? As we're driving to the lake or something, Cholamayid, listen, like it's not going to happen that whole week. Let's say for 2 whole weeks, I could sit with the text, I guess. I'm not sure when. I certainly can't listen to reviews for those 2 weeks. It's going to be mostly Yontif and Shabbos and etc. And then putting Pesach stuff away, all of that. So I guess I know what not to do. I don't know what yes to do. That's all I'm saying. I'm saying for the next 2 weeks I could play it in the background, fine. But
yeah, the truth is, Sharia food is not something that you can play in the background. It's literally, I find it difficult. There's like a switch in the brain to go to Sharia food. So it makes me uncomfortable when you say what we want you to do. I think you must find for yourself what you can
oh
do.
no, but I know what I want to do. Remember, I have a long history with Shira Malka, Allah Shalom, and we used to have arguments about this all the time. And so we never resolved it. We're still we never resolved it of how you can do it. Of course, I have my way of learning things of that. I would find it incredibly exciting to kind of every day, a little thing about how does this relate to Pesach? That's not what it is. So all the things I know how to do, that's not what it is. All the thing I know how to not understand something. I know how to do that too. I have no idea what it is. I know how to not know what something is, and I know how to know what something is, but neither of those is really it. I know that.
To be honest, I think, we're really running over time. And
right.
Just to say that I guess this is happening because we're having a 4-week break, but it is not something that we want to do. We do want to keep things, like really boundaried. I hesitate to say this, but I will say it anyway. And so, Mila, you can correct me if I'm wrong. But I believe that you almost have to learn this by heart. So, this would be my suggestion. Take a paragraph, go back to the beginning, and while you're cleaning or cooking or doing something, maybe not with sharp knives, but go over the ideas thought by thought in your brain. See if you can, or even paragraph by paragraph, I don't know, something. Just learning the pshat. The pshat is really what you want to know right now. Is just the information. And you'll see that when you go over the pshat in your mind, it's like that process of bringing the water up from the koach hamaskil, bringing it slowly up through the ground. The more you go through it, the deeper you bring it through the many layers of sand, it begins to cleanse it. And you go through the literal information, and suddenly you realize, oh, I have a question. Or, oh, wow, I didn't see that detail before. That's my suggestion. Just learn the pshat so that you know it so well that now, now you know the axioms. Now you know, like literally, what the three mashalim of this are and how, just the pshat. That's all.
And no matter how many times I've done chapter 1 with people, every single time I go back, I find something new. There's no way, it's endless. Yeah, and that's the beauty of it. This is the beauty of Chazara, because you don't want to, come out of it. Oh, I know it all, and now I know how to apply it everywhere. It's not. It's a constant process of going back to Orech, bringing in new things and noticing little things that you never paid attention. For example, that detail about Orech and Orech right away comes before Rochav, right? That we discussed early in the class, because there is this yichud of Orech and Orech. It kind of skips the Rochav. So even in the text, you notice that he makes, because every word and the position of words and the expressions is very calculated by the mashpia, because he's packaging the essence of the idea in these letters. So he has to package it in such a way that it seems to be a tzimtzum, but then there's no real tzimtzum. The whole Maimer V'Yadata Moskva talks about it from Rebbe Rochav. You could look into it about how the mashpia packages the mashal, or the packages, the wording in the Maimer. It's so calculated enormously that when we unpackage, we actually find God inside the package.
Mila, can I ask you a question? Why did you say that Chochma of Chochma is like a room?
Because that's what Rochav is. That's where action of Chochma takes place. If you ask me, where do you find Chochma in its pure state? It's in Chochma of Chochma. It's in the Rochav. The same thing is going to be everywhere. It's going to be the same thing in Bina, where a pure Bina can be found, where pure Das is going to be found, meaning the concept of these things, it's found in Rochav.
Yeah, but why is that a room?
Because that's just easier to understand, that it's a space where things take place. Just
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Okay.
Right.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. Kosher and Freilich and Pesach.
Pesach to everybody.
We should definitely see the work of our labors with expanded borders of Eretz Israel and safety of Eretz Israel. And B'ezrat Hashem, we should see each other already bringing Korban Pesach in Yerushalayim.
Amen.
Amen.
Thank you. Have a kosher and Pesach, everyone.
We're going to be in one family, right?
Yeah, that's good.
Great.
Thanks. Thanks so much.
Thank you, all of you.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Take care.
Thank you.